Okay, let's dive right into this. Welcome, everyone, to today's Explainer. Today, we are putting infant nutrition under the microscope. You know, we hear a lot of opinions out there about how to feed babies. But today, we're cutting through all that noise to look at the pure, objective science. We're going to conduct a scientific side-by-side comparison of the primary infant feeding options: breast milk, cow's milk, and formula. By the end of this explainer, you're going to have a crystal clear understanding of exactly what goes into each of these options on a microscopic molecular level. To make sure we grasp this really complex nutritional science effectively, here's a roadmap for today. First, we'll establish the rules of feeding. Second, we're decoding the terminology. Third, we'll introduce the milk contenders. Fourth, we'll get into the actual nutritional showdown. And finally, we'll wrap up with the immunity advantage.
So, let's start with Section 1, the rules of feeding, timelines and baselines.
When it comes to baseline timelines, the guidance is incredibly specific. The recommendation from global health authorities is to start breastfeeding within 1 hour of birth, and then to breastfeed exclusively from 0 up to 4 months of age. Then, right around the 4 to 6 month mark, though the exact age can vary slightly, complementary foods can begin to be introduced. By 6 months of age, complementary foods should absolutely be given to all children. But introducing solid food doesn't mean the milk stops. The baseline recommendation is actually to continue breastfeeding up to 2 years of age or beyond.
It's honestly amazing how precise an infant's needs are from a clinical perspective. The general rule of thumb is to provide exactly 5 ounces per kilogram of body weight in milk feeding per day. And for the water requirement, the baseline sits at 150 milliliters per kilogram per day. Oh, and a very crucial clinical note to keep in mind here. Milk should never be diluted after the baby reaches 12 weeks of age.
All right, moving on to Section 2, decoding feeding terminology, speaking the language.
Let's start with exclusive breastfeeding. What does that actually mean? Well, it literally means giving a baby absolutely no other food or drink, not even water. The only exceptions allowed are medicines or vitamin and mineral drops. But note this, because it's important. Feeding a baby expressed breast milk from a bottle still absolutely counts as exclusive breastfeeding because the source of the nutrition remains exclusively human milk. Next up, we have predominant breastfeeding. This contrasts with exclusive breastfeeding because, while the baby is primarily breastfed, they are also being given small amounts of water or water-based drinks like tea. And finally, we have partial breastfeeding. This is precisely what it sounds like, giving a baby some breast feeds but actively supplementing that with some artificial feeds. That could be infant formula, cow's milk, cereal, or other foods introduced alongside the breast milk. Now, a baby's nutritional needs also shift depending on exactly when they enter the world. Preterm defines babies born alive before 37 weeks of pregnancy are completed. Full term means a baby is born right around 39 weeks. And a post-term baby is one born 2 weeks or 14 days or more after the usual 9 months, or 280 days of gestation. Having this vocabulary locked in is vital because a baby's needs can change significantly based on these specific timelines.
Okay, Section 3, the milk contenders, entering the ring. Now, what's really interesting here is looking at the objective facts about our non-human options.
The facts tell us that animal milks are fundamentally different from breast milk in both the quantity and the quality of nutrients. For infants under 6 months in exceptionally difficult situations, animal milks can be home-modified by adding water, sugar, and micronutrients as a short-term replacement. Industrially, infant formula modifies cow's milk or soy products to adjust nutrient quantities to be more comparable to breast milk. However, we have to look at the clinical risks objectively here. Powdered infant formula is actually not a sterile product. Life-threatening infections in newborns have been traced back to contamination with pathogenic bacteria, such as Enterobacter sakazaki, found in unsterile powder. Furthermore, soy formula contains phytoestrogens. These are compounds with activity really similar to human estrogen. The clinical concern? This could potentially reduce fertility in boys and bring early puberty in girls.
Which brings us to Section 4, the nutritional showdown, the tale of the tape. Let's get down to the microscopic, molecular level. Let's start with protein. Both milks contain whey and casein. But consider the ratio in human milk. It averages 60% whey to 40% casein. To use a very helpful metaphor from our source material, think of casein as lumpy and whey as watery. So human milk, being predominantly watery whey, is incredibly easy for a newborn's delicate system to digest. But when we pivot to cow's milk, the script completely flips. Cow's milk protein is close to 20% whey and a massive 80% casein. This is a huge qualitative difference. That 80% lumpy casein makeup means cow's milk forms heavy, dense curds in the stomach, making it significantly harder for an infant to process. And the data brilliantly illustrates the differences in carbohydrates too. While both milks have the exact same calories and water per 100 milliliters, think about the carbohydrate levels. Human milk sits at 7.4% carbohydrates, primarily beta-lactose. Cow's milk is significantly lower, at just 4.4% carbohydrates, primarily alpha-lactose. Because of this, human milk is naturally much sweeter and richer in these specific essential energy sources.
So, the absolutely crucial point to remember here is that qualitative differences matter just as much as quantitative ones. Both milks actually contain an almost equal amount of total fat, right around 3.5%. Both contain olein, palmitin, and stearin. But the quality is vastly different. Human milk contains twice the amount of olein compared to cow's milk, and olein is far more easily absorbed by the infant's body. So even with equal fat content, the baby extracts much more usable energy from the human milk fat. It's truly amazing biological engineering.
And this difference gets even more fascinating when we look at minerals. While cow's milk contains a higher raw volume of sodium, phosphorus, and calcium, pay close attention to iron. Cow's milk is very low in iron, and while breast milk's total iron is also low at 0.5 milligrams, its bioavailability is vastly superior. That basically means it is perfectly primed to be absorbed. Because it's so well absorbed, an exclusively breastfed infant can actually depend entirely on their own internal iron stores for the first 4 to 6 months of life.
Now, there is one specific exception we need to call out regarding vitamins. Both milks have large amounts of vitamin A and adequate vitamin B complex. However, human milk is naturally quite low in vitamin D, largely depending on the mother's own nutrition and sun exposure. Because of this, breastfed infants actually require a daily vitamin D supplement of exactly 400 IU, or international units, per day.
To summarize this whole showdown, it's clear how formula attempts to bridge the gap. It partially corrects the heavy protein of cow's milk. It adds essential fatty acids and carefully calibrates vitamins and minerals to match human milk as closely as possible. But there's a glaring difference when it comes to anti-infective and growth factors. Formula registers as none. While industrial science can synthesize vitamins and adjust protein ratios, it simply cannot replicate the bioactive factors naturally present in human milk.
Which leads us perfectly into Section 5, the immunity advantage, the biological verdict.
First, consider the profound evolutionary efficiency and logistical convenience of breast milk. Step 1, it's always available. Step 2, there is 0 preparation time required. Step 3, it is always delivered at the exact optimum temperature for the infant. And Step 4, unlike powdered formula, it is practically free from pathogenic bacteria straight from the source. It really is the ultimate closed-loop, safe feeding system.
But here is the scientific knockout punch: the anti-infective properties. Human milk is literally alive. It contains actual antibodies, specifically IgG and IgA. These actively protect the baby against severe infections like E. coli, cholera, polio, tetanus, and measles. The IgA antibodies act as a protective shield, physically preventing microorganisms from adhering to the intestinal mucosa, thereby providing local gastrointestinal tract immunity. Animal milks simply do not possess these anti-infective factors, which directly correlates to a higher risk of infection when using them.
Well, we've covered the rules, the terminology, and the microscopic differences today. And as we wrap up, I want to leave you with this final provocative question to think about. If modern nutritional science is advanced enough to synthesize almost any complex chemical and isolate any mineral, why does the living, anti-infective biology of human milk remain utterly impossible to perfectly replicate? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep learning, and I'll see you next time.